The customs officer found something strange. The truck was obviously overloaded, but the compartment was very empty. In order to find out the truth, he came to the end of the car body outside, and then ordered his men to stand in the innermost part and shoot out. Sure enough, there was a compartment hidden in the compartment. Everyone who heard the gunshots looked ashen, as if they would be dead if they were discovered. But after the customs officer came in, he did not rush his men to shoot. Instead, he told the people inside with a kind face that whoever came out first would be spared. But everyone did not believe the customs officer's lies. After a few minutes, no one dared to come out. Just when the customs officer lost his patience and was about to order the shooting, a girl couldn't resist the temptation and came out. She thought, "I was able to escape, but I didn't know that the customs had already gone crazy." The screams of the crowd echoed in the carriage. In just a moment, hundreds of lives were lost. One of the women had foresight and climbed on top of the stacked wooden boxes, so she was not shot. The customs wanted to go in for a closer inspection, but suddenly saw a puppy running out. However, when she opened the iron door and found that there was still a little girl alive, she did this. Why did the customs dare to kill people at will? It was because of the serious civil unrest in the future Spain. The war led to a shortage of survival supplies, so the elderly, women and children became the first targets of slaughter. In order to escape from this country, a large number of people smuggled across the border every day, and the heroine Mia and her husband did the same. However, during the smuggling process, she and her husband were forced to be divided into two different containers, which led to the opening scene. After the soldiers cleaned up the bodies in the carriage and left, Mia quickly took out her mobile phone and sent a voice text message to her husband who was smuggling across the border. But after waiting for a long time, there was still no reply from her husband. Just when Mia was worried, she suddenly found that the container she was in was slowly sailing towards the sea with the ship. Thinking that she would soon escape from here, Mia finally let go of her worries. Little did she know that this sea trip would be unforgettable for her. The ship was sailing on the sea and suddenly encountered a super tsunami. Mia's container accidentally fell into the sea and she was knocked unconscious by the violent turbulence. When Mia woke up again, she looked out through the bullet hole and found herself in despair in the vast ocean. But this was not even worse, her mobile phone was also broken, and the touchscreen function failed, making it impossible to unlock the phone. At this point, Mia could only find another way. Fortunately, she found a backpack left behind by someone else in the container. In addition to a bottle of drinking water and tools, there was also a flip phone. When Mia was about to call the outside world for help, she found in despair that the flip phone was actually set with a password. She tried several times and the password was displayed as wrong. Mia threw the flip phone to the ground angrily, and then touched the unborn baby in her belly. She understood that even if not for herself, for the sake of the unborn child. Cheer up. So Mia set her sights on the few wooden boxes, thinking that it would be great if there were satellite phones inside. However, the greater the expectations, the greater the disappointment. There were only a lot of fresh keeping boxes in the first wooden box, which were obviously useless, but fortunately there was a pile of clothes in the second wooden box. Mia wore them, so at least at night, the baby in her belly would not be frozen. With a good attitude, she opened two more wooden boxes in one go, but they were all some useless digital products. And these seemingly useless things became her source of food in the future. There was still one last wooden box hanging in the air, but Mia was too short to reach it, so she gave up for the time being. Looking at the seawater that kept flowing in, Mia quickly found a roll of tape. The bullet holes were blocked, but this could only slow down the speed of the seawater rising. At this moment, screams of people suddenly came from outside. Mia, who heard the noise, looked through the small hole and saw that the green container number 107 was slowly sinking into the sea. Wasn't that the container her husband was riding in? Mia was extremely anxious when she saw this. In a hurry, she removed her SIM card and inserted it into her flip phone. Unexpectedly, she was able to make a call. But soon, the container sank completely into the sea, and no one answered the call to her husband. This made Mia think that her husband had met with an accident and she immediately lost hope of survival. Then, she took out a knife and was about to cut her wrists. When she was about to commit suicide, she suddenly felt a pain in her stomach. It turned out that the baby was kicking her crazily. Mia calmed down instantly. She knew that even if it wasn't for herself, she had to cheer up for her unborn child. Soon, Mia fell asleep in extreme sadness, but when she woke up, she suddenly found that the seawater was rising rapidly. In a short while, the seawater submerged the container. It turned out to be just a dream, but it was too real. Sure enough, when Mia checked the small hole, she found that the tape could not stop the seawater from flowing in. Looking at the only wooden box left behind, Mia took a lot of effort to get it down. She opened it with the last hope, but there were still a bunch of fresh keeping boxes inside. But at this moment, Mia seemed to have discovered something. Looking at the plastic ring on the fresh keeping cover, she suddenly had an idea, so she cut the plastic ring into several small pieces and used it to block the hole, which was obviously more practical than tape. Then, she picked up the foam box of the color TV, removed the hose on it and plugged it out. Outside, the rising seawater was then drained out little by little. Although this could not change the fate of the container sinking into the sea, it could greatly slow down the sinking speed. After doing all this, the woman finally remembered to call 112 for the emergency. But, Mia was not discouraged, and then began to count all the supplies in the container to see what else could be used. At this moment, the flip phone next to her suddenly rang. Mia picked it up and found that it was her husband who called. He told Mia that he was out of danger and would soon find a way to rescue her. With her husband's promise, Mia felt relieved. However, one thing led to another. That night, there was a violent storm outside. To make matters worse, Mia suddenly felt that she was about to give birth. Due to the picture, it is not convenient to go into details here. The woman successfully gave birth to a baby on a thunderstorm night, but the good times did not last long. Because the baby needed milk, Mia had to give birth. A large amount of food was consumed every day, and the food that was supposed to last a week was consumed in just a few days. However, Mia did not completely wait for death. She used an electric drill to try to open a gap in the container every day. After unremitting efforts, she drilled a row of small holes on the container. When she saw that it would take a while to open the gap, the electric drill broke down at this moment. No matter how Mia fiddled with it, it didn't respond. Although hope was right in front of her, she had no way to deal with it. To make matters worse, the flip phone was out of power, so she could only reinsert the phone card into her mobile phone, but the phone was still the same and could not be unlocked. In addition, the baby next to her kept crying, and Mia, who was upset, threw the food storage box to vent herself. Her emotions at this moment, she accidentally found a dagger. In order not to be trapped in the container, Mia continued to cut the notch on it with the dagger under the scorching sun. It seemed that she was about to succeed, but the dagger broke due to wear and tear. Since the water in the bottle had been drunk a few days ago, Mia was dizzy with thirst at this moment. She picked up the bottle and filled it with half a bottle of seawater and poured it on her face, but it did not quench her thirst at all. So she stood on a high place and licked the container. The water droplets formed on it, mixed with the taste of rust, made Mia retch, which was not much better. Fortunately, there was a heavy rain at sea the next day, and the rain flowed in through the gap. Mia immediately perked up, and she took out a big. The container has a lot of rainwater, so there is no need to worry about water shortage. After recovering her strength, Mia thought of a new way to open the gap. She picked up a cloth bag, stuffed it into the middle of the iron plate, and then pulled it down with all her strength. Finally, with her unremitting efforts, the container finally opened a gap. Mia climbed out of the container. There was still an endless sea around her. She couldn't even see a person, but the fresh air outside made her feel a lot more comfortable. After Mia changed the baby's diaper and threw it into the sea, she accidentally discovered that the diaper stained with feces could attract fish in the sea. Seeing this, Mia picked up the iron bracket and wanted to stick some fish in, but she tried for a long time. He didn't catch any fish, but he didn't give up. Instead, he used his wisdom to make a simple fishing net using the wired headphones in the container, and then threw the child's diaper on it. Not long after, a big fish was attracted. Mia was not picky about food and ate it raw in big mouthfuls so that she would have milk to feed her baby. On the 9th day of being trapped in the sea, Mia either poured out the seawater or went fishing every day. She even kept the fish she caught in a fresh keeping box to keep the food fresh. Although she didn't know where the container she was in had drifted to, she firmly believed that her husband would come to rescue her. But until that night, her husband called and said that he was unfortunately shot by the customs on the way there and could no longer go to rescue her. Mia burst into tears after hearing this, and her phone turned off because it ran out of power. At night, Mia lay on the container, holding her baby in her arms, and fell into deep despair. On the 26th day of being trapped, the seawater in the container had risen by more than half, and it was possible to sink into the sea at any time, so the mother and daughter had to move to the bottom of the container. Mia realized that if she wanted to survive, she couldn't stay there and wait to die. So she used the materials in the container to make a simple raft. At this time, a seagull flew over. Mia immediately realized that they were not far from the land, but at night, the blocked hole was suddenly washed open by the current. Mia, who saw this, wanted to go down to block the hole, but because she was too anxious, her feet were accidentally entangled in the rope and she couldn't get out. At this time, the container tilted seriously, and the baby lying on the raft was washed away by the current. The more anxious Mia was, the more she couldn't break free from the rope under her feet. Soon, the entire container was filled with seawater and slowly sank to the bottom of the sea. At the critical moment, Mia finally cut the rope with a knife, but when she surfaced, she found that the baby was washed away by the waves. At this moment, a huge whale suddenly appeared in front of Mia. Mia thought it was coming to eat her, and she was so scared that she couldn't pee. The two were all wet, but the whale ignored the woman and swam to the baby. She deliberately sprayed seawater on the raft, and the baby burst into tears immediately after being drenched. Mia, who heard the sound, identified the direction and finally found the baby. The whale, who did good deeds without leaving a name, called out and left without looking back. Although this scene was magical, how long could they survive on the sea without the shelter of the container? On the second day, due to long-term immersion, Mia's consciousness began to gradually blur. Before she fell into a coma, she threw the leftover fish bones on the sea, and it was this small action that saved her and her baby's life. It turned out that the fish bones attracted a large number of seagulls. When they were circling in the sky, they were attracted by the fish not far away. Ming Guy noticed that the mother and daughter were salvaged. I can't describe the expression on Mia's face after